So let's skip the coffee in order to be able to finish today. And next session is about case studies. Case studies is always a very interesting session. We have prepared 3 case studies. And Angelos will take the floor. Angelos is works in Dynamarine. He has not a shipping background. However, he is very good in PR and in marketing. So he will take the floor.
We talk a lot about the significance of an SMNs in STS operations, about the profiling of STS service providers, about the importance of the simulator for STS. We talked about the STS equipment. Either we're talking about fenders, hoses, mooring ropes. But I think it's time now, in order to close this conference, to talk about some real cases and that happened, where some incidents or near misses happened. But the most important thing, I believe, is to see the lessons learned in order not to happen again, these kind of things. As I believe, incidents and near misses happen because sometimes all the safety rules do not follow by book. And because of that, I would say that, let's see, the motto of this conference, as I say, is that safety first, because accidents last. And I want to keep it for the whole conference, and I want you to keep it till the end. But enough with me speaking. The first case is going to be presented by Mr. Leonis Tsakos, who is ISM TMSA compliance supervisor at TMS Tankers. And his story starts many years even before, when graduating from Merchant Marine Academy of Aspropyrgos as a second officer, and he sailed for 5 whole years until he became Captain Class B rank. In between his sea service, he was working as SORAS in order to enhance his experience in several companies. Some of them was to be assistant port captain and safety quality environmental in Eletson Corporation, safety and quality manager in Nunubros Shipping, and also deputy DBA, safety culture development, and fleet training manager in Almi Tankers. But now, as I said also in the beginning, he's working as an ISM TMSA compliance supervisor in TMS. Besides that, he has also completed 2 Master Art degrees in shipping business, and we're talking about shipping chartering and management studies in shipping. So I want you to welcome Mr. Leonis Tsakos. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for allowing us being here and share our experience. Today, on behalf of TMS Tankers, we would like to share an incident during STS mooring operation. An incident took place late 2018 between our vessel, a Suezmax vessel built 2014, and an Aframax vessel named Morning Glory built 1996. Our vessel has received orders to load her cargo through STS operation at Amuay Bay, offshore Venezuela, from motor tanker Morning Glory. Our vessel was at anchor, and Morning Glory approached her on her starboard side with the assistance of 3 tugs. The screening report of the STS operation has been completed. The STS assessment form completed by the Master of Motor Tanker Nantucket. The 3 tugs were forward, middle, and aft. And the POAC and pilot was on board motor tanker Morning Glory. Here is our vessel with her port anchor. We can see the primary fenders in black dots on our vessel. And here is the Morning Glory coming on her starboard side. The secondary fenders, two secondary fenders, one forward and one aft, we can see in orange dots here. The three tugboats, the forward one with horsepower 4,078, and the other two with horsepower 3,752. It was 1942 local time when the vessel had already completed mooring of 2 forward shear lines and 2 aft spring lines. When the bow of motor tanker Morning Glory started to open to starboard, and the stern of motor tanker Morning Glory coming close to the aft side of motor tanker Nantucket. There was a monorail crane which was extended about 1.25 meters out of the hull of motor tanker Morning Glory. And this came in contact with our live boat, our starboard live boat. Here's the contact area of the live boat and the monorail. Some photos from the contact, the live boat, the monorail, in another view. And finally, we had the damage of the live boat of about 33 cm length, 20 cm width, and 8.5 centimeters diameter of a hull, plus a total damage of the aft davit. According to the master, the forward bow tug was unable to provide the adequate power once the forward bow of the motor tanker Morning Glory started to open, and while the 2 forward lines were lagging. According to the POAC and P&I representative, the incident occurred due to the prevailing and sudden rough weather conditions, and the situation was beyond the control of both masters. The risk assessment was mentioning that berthing will be daytime. Actually, the operation was nighttime. According to the STS checklist, and in particular question 17, are both sides of the ship clear of any overhanging projections, including breeze wings? The ship operator's confirmation was affirmative. There was no concern raised about the monorail crane. The safety meeting between both vessel master and POAC had not taken place before the STS operation. There was a generic STS mooring plan in use. The mooring plan was not corresponding to the actual vessel's drawing and fitting. And the aft baby fender wasn't on proper position due to the unavailability of Panama choke between the aft mooring spring and the bridge of Morning Glory. If we want to summarize all this in one phrase, allow me to use something that is not mine. Those who fail to plan is planning to fail. And then planning was failed during this operation. Soon after the incident, tugboats assisted to safely complete the mooring. And as you can imagine, a lot of notifications made to the company, to the charterers, class, flag, P&I, agents. As soon as the situation was stabilized, the company issued a temporary management of change along with a risk assessment in order to evaluate the hazards of the new conditions operating a vessel with one live boat out of order. Arrangement made for class attendance. and a short-term safety equipment certificate issued. The damaged live boat secured and placed out of service. Some of the actions of temporary management sense were to have an abandoned ship drill, an extra abandoned ship drill with a new condition, to update the master list, to post warning notices. What we consider as root causes for this case: the uncontrolled movement of the vessel due to the uneven bow tug power, the lack of proper assessment of weather conditions, the POAC has not undergone an STS handling course, we have seen insufficient communication between the POAC pilot and the tug masters, inadequate assessment from the master of the maneuvering vessels towards the POAC and pilot advices, and of course, ineffective supervision by both masters. What we consider as action to avoid reoccurrence and what we have done, we had an incident circulation to share the lesson learned of the incident to the fleet. The case was included in the pre-joining familiarization agenda in order to discuss with the officers prior to the embarkation. We have reviewed and revised as necessary the STS risk assessment with one vessel at anchor to include more details about the hazards of overhanging projections, specific emphasis given to the toolbox talk meeting, and the positioning of baby fenders. We check the mooring plans with the fleet to correspond to the actual drawing and not to be generic. And also a non-conformity raised by OTS, who was the service provider. And between other actions, one of the actions was to send a letter to the harbor master for the necessity of use a 4-tug boat during such operation in this area. If you ask me if these actions are enough in order to avoid reoccurrence, then probably not. For sure, we learn from this case, and the possibility to happen something identical has been reduced. But there are no identical conditions in STS operation. Hazards are always there, and the only way to avoid reoccurrence is the good planning, alertness by all parties involved, and under a well-structured safety management system. Thank you very much.
We had a very nice speech about this case, and as I said also before, about the lessons learned after it. The next one. The next one is Captain Andrei Moisev, Senior Fleet Marine Superintendent of Bernasulte Ship Management in Cyprus. And since Stelios Perisakis has been introduced in the beginning as a chairman in the first session, unless you insist, I would say that I could leave the floor, all of you, and start presenting.
Okay. Anyway, so that's good afternoon, good evening again, guys. Thanks for those who remain, so that's the most strongest and powerful people here. Okay, I do apologize from the very beginning, so that I have a little bit lengthy, bulky presentation, but I'm going to run it fast so that I understand everything. Okay, basically what I'm going to share today is STS operation in Chittagong area, Bangladesh. In one hand is quite interesting case. From another hand, with some variations, you can find in many locations and many places like that. So basically, okay, very well-known chart. So that's available from Dynamarine. So this is modern challenges. So that we have with marked frequency locations of STS areas. And we still, we're talking today, so we talked about this one last year. So that's while regulating, STS remaining most challenging, one very challenging activity with a lot of gray areas still there. So this, we have certain regulations, but we still have some issues like STS operations with Annex 2 cargoes. Okay, we have perfectly regulated by MARPOL 1, MARPOL Annex 1 for oil transfers, nothing in MARPOL regarding Annex 2 in terms of STS. So double banking, on many cases, so the charters trying to use this excuse like, okay, so it's not STS operation, and double banking principle is the same. So bunkering operation, not regulated by MARPOL. Why? It's exactly the same. So that's, I mean, from technical point of view, it's very much similar. Locations. We have a traditional areas, which is very well known to everyone. We have a lot of things. Okay, I don't know where is the pointer, but anyway, so this, you know, this highlighted in green is over 200 STS per happen. So that's like West Africa, very common place. So Mediterranean Sea of Sicily, Malta, Gola area. So that's okay. And we have certain areas where the STS is became, it appears, but it's not really a frequent one. Okay, we have a complicated networking in certain areas. Okay, if let's say we are talking about traditional areas highlighted in green, so we have a perfectly nicely established chain of STS providers with the proper equipment, so procedures and so on, so on, so on. In certain areas, as Dr. Glikas mentioned, so that's like, it's a single person company, so that's acting as STS provider, is kind of STS provider, kind of POSC, and sometimes the standards are really, really questionable. And we have lack of understanding of requirements and lack of following the legal requirements, so-called precedent law. So that's a lot of charterers coming with arguments to us as operators. We did it so many times, why you cannot do it? So we did it so many times. And I love this statement, so that's when it comes to like, okay, we did it so many times, great, fantastic, perfect. It's not working like that. So that's, there are certain requirements, there are regulations, and we have also, how to say, best industry practices, which we're trying to implement as a law. So that's a proper way, in my opinion. Okay, the case. So that's once upon a time, so vessel has been fixed to discharge her cargo of palm oil. It's a small chemical tanker, so the 16,000 deadweight, Chittagong, Bangladesh. So initial fixture doesn't specify anything. Okay, discharging in Bangladesh. So that's, and then later on, we'll discharge it via barges. Okay, fine. So barges I put in the brackets, so that's because upon receiving nomination, so we recognize, so that's that barges is actually small coastal tankers, 1.5 to 2,000 tons deadweight. So it's basically a ship, self-propelled, everything perfectly. So that's compared to the 16K tanker, it's about the same like we're talking about VLCC and Suezmax. I mean, technically, looks very similar operation in scale. So the show begins when it's a barges, there is no P&A certification, there is no any certificates at all, so no documentation. We try to trigger the process, doesn't working. So, I mean, oh, sorry. We had it so many times, that's the response from the charters, so why you needed this one? Okay, so for the STS equipment, exactly the same story, nothing available. I mean, so that's, what kind of certificates do you want? And okay, in certain stage, we got something. So, okay, the key point, we decline to go like that to the operation. So it was lengthy discussion, numerous telephone calls, a lot of correspondence, complaints, and so on. And but moreover, so that vessel is there, I have to deliver the cargo, and because we cannot, based on our, so that's we try to go for the option to fight the jetty. Okay, it's not happened. So, because initially it was very positively looking to do it via jetty discharging, not happened. And the next step is actually cargo receivers afraid that our vessel may run away Okay, so this is not in our behavioral things, so but in their local understanding, so this vessel may just sail away with the cargo on board, they place a commercial arrest to the ship. So actually placing 7 people, local guys, guarding the ship so not to sail away. So we are in PAT situation when it's basically, so vessel is there, we cannot go for STS without proper mitigating actions, and vessel can depart because they want their cargo. End of story. So we have to look for the solutions, and it's not easy one. So we are approached to our fantastic colleagues from Dynamarine, asking for the help. Okay, decision was that one of the Dynamarine representative, thank you, Arkiris, goes there and help, assist with a local assessment. So, okay, there is no sufficient information to screen to follow the screening process. So that's, and we sent to do the following: assessment of the STS location, assessment of available STS equipment, summarize all available information, highlight the areas of concern, so that's, and implement the proper risk mitigation actions for the final decision if we finally will manage to do something about it. So, okay, it was complicated way the things was done. So we sent a P&I representative as well to do the inspect of the sister ships. So that's and basically the main player was there. So that's Dynamarine representative who is doing assessment of various cases. So that's we did complete finally the STS. So that's without any incidents and so on. How we did it? We had a commercial pleasure. So that's, sorry to say towards the charter guys. So that's, we face it. So we did request initially the well-known list of documents. I'm not going to stay on it. Asking, so that's to assess the compatibility of the ships. When we fail it, this is standard list. So we try to get alternative set, at least to evaluate dynamically what we can do. This list of documents, which is slightly different, but at least trying to implement some certain mitigating actions. So, and the most important was that vessels are insured, that we have a legal coverage from our P&I club, and in case of any incidents, proper STS equipment, assistance of the tax we're using as a mitigating action as well. So that's communication protocol in English, because it's obviously so there are some lack of understanding, say in this way. So that's, and was not available information. So that's, and P&I and Dynamarine representative went on site and do inspection of these vessels. 2 daughter vessels has been inspected. Those vessels has finally statutory certification in Bangladesh as per Bangladesh local authorities, and there is no STS plans on board for the ships. So, and nothing related to the lettering ships. Anyway, vessel is arrested there, cannot move out, so we have to find a solution. Okay, we had this continuous pressure from charters. We did it so many times with that ships, so we politely declined this option, and we finally, so that's pushing, so that's a lot of, with assistance of Dynamarine, providing the proper response, the applicable regulations, and especially, so that's, as I mentioned in the beginning, so the requirements, so that's of legal requirements and the implementation of legal requirements rather than precedent law, so that we explain why we use it, including best management practices and applications, so that's for the type of cargo. So that's, as I mentioned, Annex 2, RBT palm oil is not Annex 1 cargo, it's not regulated by MARPOL, but it's the same applicability process based on the best management practices towards the ICMF guidelines. So, oops, I had including ship owners' obligations towards ensuring safety. So we're using charter party clauses, as Jessica told earlier today. So I would stop and read these things. So this is quite well known. We discussed it today as well. So we trying to explain that we need the ship's compatibility assessments, and this is of proper rigging of the vessels, alliance with manifolds, assessment of freeboard, mooring operations, primary, secondary fendering, and so on. So the risk assessment procedures, provisions information provided to the master. So STS organizer duties as per AKIM guidelines. Technically speaking, so that's going a little bit further ahead, so that's so-called STS provider is not really STS provider in this area. So anyway, and the location assessment, it's quite new for us, so that we don't have experience, and it was difficult, and the data sample for this location is quite low. So to understand if we are safe to do, so that's it's one of the purpose, so that we send a representative to see and assess the location. So that's STS equipment. It's another fantastic story. They provide certain certification. So, and initially it was stated it is Yokohama fenders, properly tested and so on. And upon arrival to Chittagong, Argyris did inspection of proposed fenders, and it was concept of inspection to assess size, condition, in line with applicable requirements. So that's, and it should be 3, 2.5 by 5.5. Okay, we say it's fine, looks good. Okay. We understand, so that's okay. Local requirements might be slightly different from area to area, especially involving the smaller tankers. Okay, what was seen on the site? That is the fenders proposed. So that is condition of net. This is somebody told me that it is safety valve. Okay, so that's so. Technically speaking, so that's when Argyris sent these photos, we say, whoops. And obviously, so that's, okay, and it's clearly, it was not Yokohama fenders. So it was something else. So that's, I think even the size was slightly different. I mean, storage conditions, so that's, it was a very nice presentation earlier regarding how the fenders should be stored. Yes, it slightly reduced the pressure, so that you can see it. So, but obviously, so this is not in the heat, or in the cold and dry place. No, dry, so this, but okay. Anyway, we politely declined to use these kind of fenders. So, come on, so that's okay. Substandard condition, obviously. Okay, not Yokohama. Okay, the size was incorrect, the test pressure. I mean, so that's all these things declared was totally incorrect. So, we're looking for solutions. Okay, what we do? So that's assessment of the place. So, okay, so that's basically STS location. What in addition was done, so this is location, preparation of joint plan, so preparation of framework to accommodate mooring plan after assessing the mooring arrangements, provision of fendering, proper fendering, provision of continuous work meeting with the senior officers, because every ship, so that we managed to inspect 2, rest of the ship in totally, I think it was 4 or 5 involved in 8 operations. We managed to discharge, and every vessel, it was from the very beginning, so that's assessment of the ship and so on. There was a lot of job done by Dana Marina in this respect to assess the condition of area, location. And for the mooring, so that's, again, so that's, it was the following pattern. 3 headlines, 1 spring, 2 stern lines. It's definitely not in line with ICMF recommendation. However, so that's, we send only daughter vessel lines. They have been in fair condition, but acceptable. We do not send our lines because condition of mooring chocks and mooring outfitting on these daughter vessels was, politely say, so below approved standards. So this we definitely will damage our ropes. We don't want to, okay, we would like to give the job for Mr. Karanakis, so this, but we try to save a bit money for our owners. Mooring lines were deployed, and basically pattern assessed locally, so this was considered applicable, so that's based on the weather forecast condition and other things. Vending, okay. Initially, so this alternative solution was truck tires, which is promised to be work good. We again politely declined, so this is a proper solution. Finally, we managed to find baby fenders, utilize these primary fenders in order to match the parallel body length. So that's 1.2 by 2. So evergreen maker. And actually, so these fenders was in good condition. Another contributing factor is actually freeboard of the daughter vessels in certain cases was only 0.8 meters. We can't even technically place the bigger fenders because otherwise we can cause some damage to daughter vessels. So, and okay, they have been properly tested. That was how it looks like. Okay, technically, so it looks much better than so-called Yokohama fenders. Sorry again, so that's to mention your name. Okay, so cargo hoses. There was no big issues with the cargo hoses. Arrangements is the 3 strings formulated on a composite hose, 6 by 9, so that's 27 meters, composite, plastic material. Okay, at least it was tested and the condition was fair, but okay, so this, again, we had some limitations in proper, in a way of proper supporting the hoses. Unfortunately, okay, we have to deal with reality. So that's, and arrangements was done without any issues to the hoses. Major operational findings and concerns we have found. So that's weather condition. It was not a major factor in this area. So actually, so that's the job done is fantastically, so this to keep in database of this kind of locations of assessment of STS. So major point there, it was a strong current, very strong current. So that's, and you have to be extremely careful. So that's in order to properly utilize, plus keep in mind the additional load to anchoring systems, because you understand, so that your vessel is anchored, so that you hang another one on the same anchoring system, so have to be careful. We had on separate topic and separate incidents related to the damage to anchoring system, or actually so loss of anchor, because charters, it was dry ship, so they hang too many vessels on the sides, because for them it's very difficult to stay at anchor at this current, so that they hang on our ship, like resting, despite they are not involved in direct cargo operation, so that's causing overweight and anyway. Okay, there are uncertainties concerning the provided service by third parties, including quality of the fenders. Traffic in the location, it was an issue. Because underway casting off cannot be take place in case of emergency because a lot of traffic there. Location is not sheltered. It is within port limits of Chittagong, however, it's not really protected. Weather limitations subject to size. Okay. And STS superintendent master engaged vessel should agree with maximum weather criteria there. Port authorities don't have any specific guidelines related to STS operation. General navigation guidance provided to reach the areas. Traffic in the area could not permit the use of main engine in case of emergency. So, and the use of tax was deemed to be necessary as emergency assistance. Again, we face some restrictions because use of tax, additional money, charters are not happy to spend money. Safety culture of daughter vessels crew doesn't meet international requirements, it is the best practices. Not surprising, so that we know how low human life is treated in this area, so that's in Chittagong specifically, so that workers are dying by hundreds, so that nobody count them, so that's unfortunately for us it's a shocking. So, and obviously use of PPE is not a habit, not a safety culture. There is no safety culture actually, so that's. Daughter vessels approach was, all of them was from starboard quarter. All daughter vessels approached in the same manner, and maneuvering overall satisfactory apart of step angle approaching, which may cause steel-to-steel contact. So that in certain cases it was situations when it's basically, I had a video, but I didn't include it, so it's not to lengthy my long presentation in any way. So what conclusions we have? The STS locations on nominated vessels did not comply with CMF guidelines, and there was no information available from charters to allow owners to access potential hazards. That's a state. So participating vessels not considered as barges, contrary, they were inland tankers. Infrastructure of Chittagong location requires attention. There's not a mature STS location. It doesn't have necessary stakeholders and technical equipment to support STS operations. Charters developing trade in the locations need to devote resources towards providing information to owners in order to allow them to execute due diligence in line with the best industry practices and standards. On basis of the STS location equipment, as well as the lack of available positive evidences from daughter vessels, continuous assessment should take place by an STS experts. So, based on the fact there is no STS provider available at Chittagong as well as POIC or Mooring Master, the existence of the experts by itself, it is a risk mitigating action. So, STS operation require proper and detailed planning. Managers should conduct a detailed on-site assessment utilizing existing and tested tools and practices available within STS guidelines. Chittagong is an area with uncertainty in STS. Local infrastructure and resources require very advanced planning. So that's, and the following points to be considered. For the nominated vessels, charters should ensure via local channels the following information of nominated vessels should become available. Particulars, load line details, including freeboard assessment, general arrangement plan or equivalent. Insurance is extremely important in this case. Proof of seaworthiness, because the standards, due diligence of verifying applicability of the international conventions, it's a question mark. And the operator should undertake a suitability and compatibility analysis subject to the data mentioned in the previous slide. In case such data cannot become available, a person with a certified experience in STS operation should be appointed to attend these operations. Availability of fenders. Apart from primary fenders, secondary fenders should also be insured to protect higher freeboard surfaces. Joint plan of operation and mooring plans have to be prepared. And relevant toolbox meeting with senior officers is a key rating personnel. So, due to size available of local vessels, STS operation could take place in consecutive basis. Proper planning, work characterized hours. Okay, for the anchorage, STS location assessment should be continuously updated. Location assessment as a must process and should take place well in advance of STS operations. STS mooring operation should take place during, should not take place during the darkness hours. It is subject to master approval, but I don't think so. This is a good idea. And assessment of current should take place prior each STS operation. The sea current in the area very strong and process continues onto the mooring lines and anchor systems of motor vessels. In summary, so this in a brief summary of the mentioned case, we can face the similar situation in various variations in many locations around the world. Complicity is that we are not still well regulated. We start setting the proper best management practices, utilizing experience even for Annex II cargoes, for double bunking. It should be more or less the same. The proper selection of STS equipment, the proper choice of hoses and so on is also the must. These kind of assessments would definitely help to have a better picture for the future. I'm pretty sure if any of ship owners and managers will appear in that situation and with assistance of Dynamarine, they already had a preliminary picture what could happen. So this sharing this information via OSIS database or via industry channels, any other industry channels, definitely help us to avoid kind of recurrence. We have delays, we have monetary losses related to the discussion. But on the positive side, we managed to convince both charters, cargo receivers, and everywhere that we are not declining because we don't like. We're declining or setting additional things in order to ensure safety of the vessels, environment, our crew, and all industry in general. So I hope so that this example would help in the future for the rest of you, so as to have exactly the same things. Thank you, guys.
Very much, Andre. Thank you for sharing all this data with us. What I found most interesting was all these findings that you found down there in Stagong. And this is because I believe that in order to solve a problem, first you have to identify it.
Yes, indeed. So that's
true. Also, I would like to thank Argyris for the excellent job he did down there in Stagong. And finally, to thank Yokohama for not having such fenders and not keeping them in such amazing conditions. So, enough about the thank wishes. Let's go to the final speaker. Last but not least, too mainstream quote, but yeah, it's true that time. It's George Papaioannou, the project manager in Dynamarine. George has a master in engineering, electrical and computer sciences, along with a master in engineering management from Duke University in US. I didn't know that. Okay. He's been involved in the STS due diligence and has participated in numerous projects related to the STS since 2012. His experience involves the development of a specialized energy monitoring software, comprehensive SIP energy analysis, and emission calculations to serve industry requirements. Since 2012, also, he's a member of the Global Association of Risk Professionals and holder of the Energy Risk Professional certification. Among all the other, he's involved in all the consulting services we offer and the risk analysis we do for shipping operations. So, my beloved colleague George, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Mr. Zabas, for introducing me. Captain Andre, I would like to thank you for the very nice presentation and for showing us how the fenders have been maintained, semi-floated, so we don't destroy the elasticity of the fender. So, actually, Mr. Zeibekis was supposed to do this presentation. Unfortunately, due to an emergency, he could not make it, so I'll do the presentation instead. Sorry? Okay. So I'm going to talk for another incident that took place last year, and I'm going again to go through the root cause analysis and see what went wrong and what went right as well. So a few details about the incident, a brief description. It happened off PL Taiwan, outside the Kaohsiung city. It's actually an emerging STS location. The vessels were underway and they were discharging to one another. The weather conditions were not very good. Actually, the wind was not that strong, only 16 knots. But however, the sea state had a lot of waves and swell. And finally, what happened is that 4 mooring lines broke and there was a steel-to-steel contact. So, for this specific incident, the following records were taken into consideration. And I'm talking for this incident because other incidents might need more detailed analysis, more data to go deeper and see what has happened. But for this case, we received the VDR records, which show in detail what happened on a minute-by-minute basis, how the communication was between the masters and the mooring master, and how effectively they communicated. A screening report, the master's assessment form, and also the statement for the incident from the crew, as well as the shipboard investigation report was received. We also got the email correspondence. It's very important to see what happened prior to the incident and after the incident and what has been written. Equasis web data, OSIS database records. OSIS is the online STS information system where statistics and safety records can be found for mooring masters, service providers, equipment, vessels, crew, everything. So this was utilized as well. Photos and vessel drawings as well. It's very important to have all these records. And finally, the OKIF guidelines, where we keep as a Bible next to us and follow the guidelines very closely. So let me go in more detail what happened and the sequence of the events. The two vessels were sailing, one alongside the other. The weather condition was, as I said, 16 knots wind, but heavy swell. It was an offshore operation. The mooring master started lately to identify that there was a risk of failure. Then 2 mooring lines broke. Then they decided that they have to do an emergency cast-off. The mooring master advised one of the vessels to steer away by 15 degrees. This steering away led the other vessel to reduce the speed. However, by doing this turn, the swell was lower, so this was better for the rolling effect. In any case, 2 more lines broke, and doing this turn, the wings of the 2 bridges were aligned, and then during the rolling effect, we had the collision, steel-to-steel contact. So, you can see here the damage that happened to one of the vessels. This was the least damage happened. The other vessel had a much more severe damage. And what were the root causes identified for this incident? First of all, of course, the due diligence was not exercised to the best possible extent. The proper process and procedure was not followed for this case. And as the Murphy's law says, when you don't do it once, it can happen this time only, and you are unlucky. The joint plan of operation was incomplete. There was no risk assessment received, no mooring plan, no fendering position. Everything was on the spot delivered. And of course, there was no clauses in the JPO where someone would define under which weather conditions you would cease the operation and you would start the emergency cast-off. Also, the POC the POC did not identify timely the condition of the weather and how this could lead to become an incident. And last but not least, there was no evidence provided from the service provided regarding the experience of the POC and his qualifications in the area. This is a damage that the other vessel sustained, much more severe, as I said. For the other vessel, we had crew fatigue because the vessel was involved in consecutive STS operations prior this one. So there was indeed crew fatigue. Again, the course over ground was not adequately monitored and assessed by the captains as well. And last but not least, we had lack of training from both vessels. There were no drills occurred before the operation, no table topics discussed, and there wasn't any captains meeting to see how they will organize everything. So we can see above the actual positioning of the fenders, how they were positioned. We see a very big gap here. So the correct mooring plan would be something like that. And you shall notice that these 2 things were considered as the secondary fenders. Personally, I would use them for 2 fishing boats to go one by side, but not for such vessels to be utilized in such operation. So these were the baby fenders, as you can see, very bad practice. But we shall also be positive and see what went right, not only see what went wrong. So there was no personal injuries. This is the most important thing. In any incident, we need to have the crew as safe as possible, to keep the crew as safe as possible. There was no oil spill, either on deck, neither at the sea. This is also very important. And also the communication with the VHF, and in general, the communication was very effective. There was no problems. The English language was very clear. Everyone understood the commands. This is important to know, and this happened very well. And of course, all the lessons learned from this case were disseminated across all the other vessels in the company. So in similar occasions, the captains would know what had happened in the past. This is also very important. And which were the lessons learned? First of all, for a safe STS, the charter needs to provide information about the service provider and the mooring master way in advance. So this will give time to everyone to prepare and know the qualifications of the POC and the equipment in what condition they will be. The due diligence shall be made in all stages, not omit anything. You have to follow a proper process every time, every single time, and not jeopardize the operation by minimizing your due diligence. The joint plan of operation is also a very, very important step. It has to be done always. It has to be agreed by both masters and the mooring master. Every detail has to be there and has to be defined so that everyone knows what he will do and how he will do it. The fourth lesson is that training is always important. Drills has to take place prior to the SS operation. Table topics, they have to discuss, they sit down, they discuss cases and what they will do in each case. It's very, very important. And this will give extra confidence to the crew and to the master so he can do his, so the master has, he will be on top of it and he can anytime feel confident to keys the operation, say, I don't feel safe with that, maybe it's better to postpone it, or he will have the knowledge and the capacity and the confidence to do that. This is very important because he always has the overriding authority. That was about it. I kept it small for you because the drinks are waiting outside. So if you have any questions now, we are all available for you to ask. Thank you very much.
So, any questions?
We don't know what for the drinks is offer.
All in the hurry for the drinks. None. Okay, I have one from Slider here, from Panos Bourlidis. Can I read the name? Oh, okay. In case you would have to go to Tsakos again, would you go?
Me personally? Gents, we are in the real world. Of course, we will go. This is cargo demands. We are have to deliver the cargo as per voyage orders. Definitely, it would be much easier, and because we know already what to expect and how to deal with it. So it will be much easier for us, and we know well in advance how to be prepared for it, for these kind of things. Okay.
Another question. Again for you. You mentioned that the cargo was palm oil Annex 2 cargo. Did you feel that you had to implement the same processes with Annex 1 cargo?
Surely, yes. Actually, so that's had some discussions regarding the things. And there are some perceptions in industries that palm oil, so that's okay, it's not pollutant, so that we shouldn't be so that's very much concerned about the pollution. It's wrong approach. So this chemical cargoes sometimes are more pollutant compared to oil. So there are certain cargoes with a density higher, let's say, so than 1.025 seawater density, which will set on the bottom. You can't do anything, so it will be massive damage to environment. So there's even palm oils, actually, so stepping a little bit to my field, so there's being a vice chairman of the Intertanko Chemical Committee, there are a lot of enforcement towards mandatory pre-wash of so-called other substances. So which is initially, okay, palm oil we are eating every day. So that's in many products on our table. But in generally, so that's, there are issues raised by European Union, first of all, and there are a lot of restrictions now appears via IMO MIPC panel towards enforcement of discharging. And definitely, so that's damage of can be reached to environmental via Annex 2 cargoes, in my opinion, can be more serious compared to oil. So in many cases, so that's in many cargoes, it definitely must be regulated. I don't know why it's not done yet. So it's a little bit
you don't have the answer to
strange point. Mostly, so it's STS operations between chemical tankers is not that frequent as compared to oil tankers, but there are. So that's, and we definitely need to do something about it.
Good. Any more questions? No hands up.
Drinks.
Drinks.
Okay.
It's like I hear it many times. So, okay. I would like to thank all and each one of you for your good, nice and lovely presentations, all the cases that you shared with us and all the data. And I believe that it's time not to keep you anymore inside and let you go out and have drinks and talk about all the topics that we discussed today. I think you have many things to talk about it, and that's it from me. Thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you, Angelos. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you all for your attendance in IFSTS 2019. I would like to thank also speakers and chairmen for their significant participation to the success of this forum, people who came all over the world to hear and learn from us, as well as people who attended through internet. Once again, I would like to thank Tsakos Group for sharing the same vision in the necessity of this forum and all the organizations that support Dynamarine in this event. I hope you found this forum interesting and innovative enough so you join us next year in IFSTS 2020. Thank you very much. In Brazil.